John Lee says he'll try his best to live up to the trust of the central government and public expectations after returning from Beijing. Carrie Lam says the government may not implement the final phase of its plan to further ease social distancing rules. And EU leaders agree to embargo 90% of Russian oil imports by year-end.
Welcome to TVB News. Chief Executive Designate John Lee has returned to the city after a 4-day trip to Beijing, where he received the official document appointing him as the 6th-term leader of the Hong Kong SAR.
Lee said he will try his best to live up to Beijing's trust and the public's expectations. Caleb Leung has more.
Chief Executive Designate John Lee returned from Beijing this afternoon and met with reporters at around 6 p.m. at the airport. Lee said he was honored to be appointed and will try his best to live up to the trust of the central government and the expectations of Hong Kong people. Lee also said Premier Li Keqiang told him that the SAR needs to do its best to control the pandemic.
I also explained to him that there have been many requests for us to consider resuming travel with the mainland. But there are a lot of challenges and difficulties we need to overcome.
This morning, Lee met with the director of the Hong Kong Macau Affairs Office, Xia Baolong. The meeting took place at Diao Yu Tai State Guest House, where Lee stayed during his trip to the capital city. It was a closed-door meeting, and there were no press arrangements for the event. Lee recapped what was discussed during the meeting.
I explained to him what I have been doing in forming the governance team. And I explained to him the thinking process and the qualifications that I will be looking at the candidates. I have only 1 month's time, and I need to do it as quickly as possible.
John Lee will take office as chief executive on July 1st. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
President Xi Jinping says Hong Kong's new electoral system should be cherished well, an idea the chief executive was quick to support today.
But Carrie Lam also said the city could work towards the implementation of universal suffrage in an orderly manner. Jackie Lin reports.
Yesterday, President Xi Jinping met with John Lee, who was officially appointed as the incoming chief executive at the Diao Yu Tai State Guest House. There, Xi said it's important the city's new electoral system be treasured, as the overhaul has helped with Hong Kong's developmental needs. 1 day later, current chief executive Carrie Lam supported the view.
The
improved electoral system should be upheld, and I think this is a very clear statement.
She says that's to ensure those who are not patriotic won't be elected into the city's political system. But on a surprising note, she says universal suffrage, the key democratic reform that has long been advocated by Hong Kong's pro-democracy groups, could be pushed forward, though in an orderly and gradual manner.
As long as conditions in Article 45 of the Basic Law are met, we can still aim at the goal of achieving universal suffrage for the electoral and CE election.
Meanwhile, when asked about possible commemoration events at Victoria Park for Beijing's Tiananmen Square crackdown on June 4th, the city leader warned they could be subject to laws, including national security legislation.
Any public activity in Hong Kong, regardless of the purpose, has to fulfill the requirements in the law. So as far as any gathering is concerned, there are a lot of legal requirements. There is a national security law, there is the social distancing restrictions, and there's also a venue question. So whether a particular activity has received the authorization to take place.
Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Zhang Xiaomin, Deputy Director of the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, will leave his role for another central government position. Sources say Zhang will be appointed as a Deputy Secretary General of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. Zhang was appointed Director of Beijing's Liaison Office in Hong Kong in 2012. In 2017, he was named Director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. In 2020, Xiao Baolong was installed as the new director of the office, but Zhang remained as a deputy director and was put in charge of the office's daily operations. Despite the change in title, Zhang remains a minister-level official.
Chief Executive Carrie Lam said today the government may not implement the final phase of its plan to ease social distancing rules, citing the growing number of cluster outbreaks in the community.
Meanwhile, the city logged 329 new COVID infections, including 35 imported cases. Numbers in the bar clusters in the central continue to grow. Kirsty Khan reports.
My position at this moment is we probably will not introduce the third and final stage of the social distancing relaxation before the end of June.
Speaking ahead of her weekly Executive Council meeting today, Chief Executive Carrie Lam said the planned relaxation of measures may not take place given the current COVID situation in the city.
We are in a sort of a stagnant situation. There have already been over 10 such infection clusters in the community, especially the most recent 2 cases involving bars. So we will have to take a very prudent approach.
Lam added the final phase of the relaxation of the measures, including letting premises operate at full capacity and allowing performances and dancing at bars will not affect most people. Lam also said the government will not consider further relaxing border control measures before the end of her term, citing the risk posed by the importation of cases and new variants. Meanwhile, Hong Kong today reported 329 COVID infections, including 35 imported cases, which is the highest number of daily infections reported since May 19th. Health officials said the number of infections from the bar clusters in Central are still rising, with 4 more cases from Central and 10 more from Iron Ferries and Jaworski, bringing their tally to 27 and 32 cases respectively. But authorities said the outbreaks in bars and restaurants were not as serious as expected.
We have 200 cases in the community. Everyone, behind each case, there is a transmission chain, so we are not worried about a super outbreak.
Meanwhile, the government said more than 50,000 people took their third COVID jabs yesterday, a day before the start of the first stage of the vaccine pass, which is today. People aged 12 or above are required to meet the latest vaccine pass requirements. They have to be triple jabbed or have had their second jab within the past 6 months when they enter various regulated venues. Kirsty Khan, TVB News.
In other news, the mainland has reported 97 new domestic cases of COVID-19, with the daily infection tally falling below 100 for the first time in 3 months. 31 of those cases are from Shanghai. Shanghai authorities say the financial hub will enter the next phase of relaxation tomorrow, adding the city aims to resume normalcy by late June. Residents in the precautionary zones will no longer face any restrictions on movement. Land transport, railway, and domestic flights to Shanghai will resume services as well. Premises, including shopping malls, supermarkets, and beauty parlors, will be allowed to reopen, but cinemas and gyms have to remain closed. Meanwhile, Beijing has reported 16 new COVID cases and 2 asymptomatic cases. The European Union has agreed to ban most Russian oil and gas imports into the bloc by the end of the year as part of new sanctions worked out at a summit Monday.
Prior to the meeting, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky chastised leaders for being too soft on Moscow. Alan Bucknia reports.
In a video call from Kiev, Zelensky urged EU leaders to get tough, noting Russia still earns almost €1 billion a day selling energy. Why are you so dependent on Russia, on their pressure, and not vice versa, he asked. Hungarian leader Viktor Orban was the biggest stumbling block to a deal, as his country gets 60% of its oil and 85% of its natural gas from Russia.
The proposal what we have got is not good. We are ready to support. We are ready to support the package 6 if there are solutions for the Hungarian energy supply security.
At the meeting, the leaders agreed to ban Russian oil and gas by sea, allowing a temporary exemption of imports via pipeline. That move was crucial to bring landlocked Hungary on board for a decision that requires consensus. The EU estimates it will effectively cut about 90% of Russian oil imports by the end of the year.
This is a remarkable achievement by the European Council. I would like to thank all the colleagues who have participated in this meeting, because we need political leadership in those extraordinary difficult times.
The new package of sanctions also excludes Russia's biggest bank, Sberbank, from SWIFT, the major global system for financial transactions.
The Sberbank is the biggest Russian bank with 37%. So this is good that we now de-SWIFT the Sberbank. There's a ban on insurance and reinsurance of Russian ships by EU companies, a ban on providing Russian companies with a whole range of business services.
The EU leaders also agreed to a new round of sanctions on more individuals and agreed to prevent 3 Russian state-owned broadcasters from distributing their content in the EU. Alan Bookniet, TVB News.
Still ahead on tonight's news, the jumbo floating restaurant may be leaving Hong Kong next month. In Paris, a man throws a cake at the Mona Lisa painting.
Welcome back to TVB News. The iconic jumbo floating restaurant in Sham Wan in the Southern District could be exiting the city next month.
The chief executive has refused calls for a government bailout to rescue the financially struggling attraction, despite earlier promises to help revamp and revitalize it. Jackie Lin reports.
After more than 2 years of pandemic-induced closure, the jumbo floating restaurant could be sailing away from Sham Wan waters, likely for good. This, as the restaurant's operator said on Monday, it cannot afford the upkeep of the structure, and the city doesn't have a proper docking space for it. Numerous citizens expressed regrets about its likely departure. Today, Chief Executive Carrie Lam insisted the government will not throw a financial lifeline to the floundering restaurant and force through an unfeasible proposal. That has marked a change of tune from the administration, as revamping the floating landmark was included in a policy address to develop the Southern District back in 2020. As part of the government's arrangement, it was donated to Ocean Park, but Ocean Park later said no third-party operators were willing to take over the vessel. Since 2013, the jumbo restaurant has recorded a deficit every year, with an accumulated loss of around $100 million. The vessel's license is set to expire next month. That means Hong Kong could be bidding farewell to this iconic floating attraction, one that received guests such as Queen Elizabeth II and Tom Cruise, as well as more than 30 million visitors over its 4 decades of history, which could soon become memory. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
The UK has begun offering short-term work visas for graduates of the world's top 50 ranked universities. Under the scheme, people who have graduated in the last 5 years from one of the eligible universities will be able to apply for the high potential individual visa. The universities must appear in the top 50 rankings of 2 of the following: Times Higher Education, the Academic Ranking of World Universities, or the Quacquarelli-Symonds World University Rankings, in the year in which they graduated. The Chinese University of Hong Kong, the University of Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology are eligible. Applicants will also have to prove they have at least a B1 level of English, where they can communicate comfortably with native speakers.
And the world's most famous painting is okay after a stunt by an apparent environmental activist. Videos appear to show a young man in a wig and lipstick in a wheelchair in front of the Mona Lisa at the Louvre Museum. The man, whose identity is not known, jumped out of the chair and tried to smash the protective glass before smearing cake across its surface. The masterpiece by Leonardo da Vinci wasn't damaged. Security guards quickly escorted the man away as he shouted at people to think of planet Earth. The 16th century painting has been targeted before. It was stolen in 1911 by a museum employee, an event that increased the painting's international fame. In the 1950s, it was damaged by an acid attack and has since been kept behind glass. In 2009, a woman smashed a ceramic cup against the glass. Wow, that's something. Anyway, that's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.